York?
I'm in LA.
LA. Okay, got it, got it, got it.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
All
So
right, we are
exciting.
live.
Oh
I'm
my goodness,
so,
yay.
so excited to be here with Dr. Taz. We have some great conversation coming up for all of you. By way of quick introduction, again, I'm Allie Wyatt, co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective in our private membership community, the 10th House. And we have these conversations every couple of weeks with leaders in industry. And I can't wait to dig into with Dr. Taz because she's really bootstrapped her wellness empire. So that's what we're going to dig into today and get some really great questions teed up. We also got some really great questions from our community and our attendees. So we'll be leaning into those. But before I start, I wanted to make a few announcements. One, Female Founders Day is officially sold out. I think I shared that last week. Again, if this is something that's super disappointing to you, we wanted to have as many people as possible there. We do have over 500 people attending. So it's a big audience. But if you are interested in learning how to build your business and scale it, the 10th House is definitely the way to go because we have our FFC experts. FFC Experts is a monthly program that we do for our members where we bring in experts like a Dr. Taz to talk about their journey and answer the real questions that you're up against right now in a really intimate setting. So if you really are disappointed, you can still get monthly amazing speakers that you get access to inside of the 10th House. Our health and wellness cohort is what is happening right now. So we bring in cohorts every 2 months and we focus on specific industries. So you have other people who understand your lingo and the problems that you're up against specifically. And that is going to be closing on March 20th. So mark your calendars. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Taz. Dr. Taz is a double board certified integrative medicine physician. She's a media contributor and a creator of HOL Plus, a cutting edge holistic health platform. With over 15 years of experience, she has built a global telehealth practice and award winning clinics in Atlanta, NYC, and LA. She's a sought after voice in wellness, frequently featured on Today, Fox 5, and First for Women. Her latest book, The Hormone Shift, became an Amazon #1 bestseller, which is like, it's one thing to be on the New York Times list, but to be on the Amazon #1 bestseller list is pretty insane. So huge kudos to you. And she is cementing her status as a leader in modern holistic health, which I think she's already done. So super excited again to have you here. I wanted to start kicking off with questions because we have so many from myself and also our audience. But you are on a mission to provide the world with true holistic medicine that combines a unique integration of science, spirit, and the human experience. Can you share how you came to find, quote, non-traditional medicine? Such
Definitely.
a
Well,
big
first, thank
out there today.
definitely. Well, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I think it's kind of surreal in a way to be sitting in this seat because while my journey is almost 15 to 20 years long, in some ways it feels like it was just yesterday, you know. So I got into this space very accidentally. It was not my intention by any means. I've told this story many times, but I was a traditional MD. I was a, ER doctor, trained in pediatrics, was thinking about leaving after residency and doing an ICU fellowship. So that's kind of like the medicine that I really liked. I liked that, high procedure type thing and being able to see lots of different things and solve problems. But the journey, which probably started in our childhood home and then expanded into being competitive to get into medical school and then into residency and the crazy hours and then choosing ER, like all of those things were starting to catch up with me. And at this point, I'm like 25, 26, 27 years old. And I started to get sick. I started to experience like a series of symptoms that you could kind of ignore. You could sort of power through and pretend like they weren't there and still go about your day, which is exactly what I did.
Yeah.
But after the years started to build up, they became just super noticeable. So I started to lose hair, I started to gain weight, all these different things. And finally it got to a point where I had to do something about it. My mom, my now husband, everybody was like, okay, there's something wrong here. You need to figure this out. But that journey of figuring things out was unfortunately very similar to what women continue almost 20 years later to experience today, which is, moving from specialist to specialist, doctor to doctor, kind of getting dismissed. The first thing I was told was that I was depressed or anxious or stressed or all of these different things,
I
and then
I feel like everybody should raise a hand if they've ever been told by a
I
doctor,
know.
every female that's been told that I had that diagnosis about 8 months ago. Continue. Sorry
Yeah,
to
the
interrupt you.
nervousness of women, right?
Um,
Apparently, that was a thing back in the 1800s too. They talked about the nervousness of women. So, anyhow, long story short, because I don't want to bore everybody with, sort of that journey, but
boring.
it was hopeless. It was
Yeah.
just I wasn't getting answers. I wasn't getting anywhere. A year has gone by, and I'm just getting worse. So, I think it was a moment of just frustration. And I finally went to the final specialist who gave me a medication that actually had pretty significant side effects. And, one of those where it drops your blood pressure. So on a random day, I take the medicine, get in my car, go work out. And apparently I bottomed out and I had what we now know as a syncopal episode where I passed out, while driving and ended up crashing my car. And it could have had devastating consequences, not only for me, but for somebody else. And I think it was that moment that I was like, I'm done. I've got to figure this out on my own. So I
Yeah.
started digging. Again, this is before Google, the way we know it, and all the things that we have today at our fingertips, but found somehow the world of holistic medicine. There was a board of holistic medicine, jumped into that world, found Chinese medicine, found acupuncture, became a certified nutrition specialist, and started to get better, honestly. And finally did the fellowship in integrative medicine with Dr. Andy Weil. I think I finished that program back in 2008. And I was better, and people around me noticed that I had reversed whatever it is with, that was going on. I had found out that I had PCOS and a gluten issue and a gut issue and a thyroid issue, and putting all those pieces together, I totally turned my own personal health around. But once you do that, like everyone around you is like, wait, what did you do? Or wait, should I take this or should I do this? And I was getting all these questions. And it was honestly my husband who sort of kicked me and was like, I think you need to do something here. So that was the entryway into even thinking about this as a career and as a starting point in medicine. And I still really didn't want to give up the ER or my ICU dreams or anything like that. So I was like, well, I'll just do this kind of like tiny hobby, talk to people every now and then type approach. And that way it's sort of feeding my soul, but I'm still doing like this high intensity medicine that I liked. So that was the beginning. Long story, but that was the beginning of all of this.
Wow, but it's such, I mean, we've all been there, right? Where you feel like something's amiss. I mean, I just had my own health journey, and so I'm particularly interested in this. But thankfully, you went and said, I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. And it's unfortunate that that's the
Right.
world we're in, right? Where you're like, I don't feel like I can trust what's being told to me. And everything is so siloed that it's really difficult to get a one sort of stop solution,
I
where
know.
somebody knows my whole body and how all of the systems are working together. So it's obviously really needed. So I want to ask you a little bit more about
Yeah.
the fact that you've pioneered in merging Eastern and Western medicine, which is huge and so necessary. What have been the biggest obstacles, though, in disrupting traditional healthcare? Right, it's such a giant that it almost, I must think, feels like, swimming against the tides of the ocean. And in that it's just so big to tackle. Can you tell us a little bit about what you faced and maybe how you navigated through it?
Oh my gosh, there have been so many. Everything
I was gonna say, I'm
from
sure every day is one, but
there's so many. I mean, I don't even know how many stories to tell and how much time we have, but it's everything from, remember, my husband was the one who encouraged me to start and believed in this from the get-go. But he was starting a dental practice. And so his proposition to me was, you just start at the back of this dental office. But we wanted to get a business loan, right? We're a young couple, one child, all this other stuff, and, not coming from like trust fund families or anything like that. So we go out to get a business loan. I couldn't get the loan. I was already practicing. I had already been earning in the ER. I was actually the breadwinner for those few years while he was in school. He went to school as soon as we got married. So he had 4 years where he was in school, and I was really the primary breadwinner. And they would not give me a loan. They're like, I don't understand. What's she doing? Is she gonna swing chickens above her head? So he had to co-sign for that loan, even though I was
Because
the owner.
do you think it's because you were a woman or because of what you were trying to do, like in
I think
terms of holistic
both.
medicine?
I think it was both. They didn't understand holistic medicine. They didn't understand the type of practice that I was trying to set up. And it was an old boys club. It was a table full of like about 6 or 7 men. And they were super kind. I mean, they were nice, but they didn't believe in me and they didn't believe in the vision, but they believed in him because he was following kind of a tried and true model of dentistry. He was a guy, all this other stuff. So that was one. So just from a entering the business world and trying to get funding, right? Which,
I didn't even think
was for
about
this
that. So
tiny,
true.
like tiny
They know
little,
how to
I mean, this,
underwrite a dental practice. It's like they don't necessarily know how do you.
no, so that was one big obstacle. I think the second was the willingness to sacrifice my credibility. And I think that was one that was a little bit harder. I had my dearest friend from med school, and we're so close now, and we've always been close, but he's a surgeon, and he was like, I don't understand why you would do this to yourself. Like, why would you set yourself up for every other doctor to shoot you down and to make fun of you? He goes, I don't know why you would do that. I go, because I believe in this and I really believe this is what needs to happen. And honestly, the practice began in 2009. And from 2009 to about 2012, maybe 2013, I was the local quack, and it was like, oh, you went to that quack doctor. Oh, you went to the witch doctor. So credibility, I think, would be the second thing I really had to fight to overcome. I think beyond that, it was sort of, just my, for better words, lack of knowledge about running a business. It was like, okay, I believe in this. I want to do this. Where do I begin? I didn't have a playbook. So many young people I see now like have this like strategic plan and they have this vision and they have like where they're going to be in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years or whatever else. And remember, I came into it very accidentally. This was not supposed to be a big company or a big business. This was really genuinely, and honestly, to this day, it is still too, about, hey, I've got some knowledge, maybe I'll share it. And in that model, there was no like, are we going to be profitable? What are our benchmarks? What are our KPIs? There was none of that. It was literally like, here we are. And I remember the way we started, my sister-in-law was unemployed at the time. And, I was like, hey, I've got this idea. I'm going to need help. I, by the way, had a 6-month-old, found out the day after we closed on our place that I was pregnant again. So have these two kids under two. And I'm like, I'm going to need help doing this. And so she and I would sit in the basement of my home and we would plan all this out. And so then when we officially opened, she would hold my son, because I came right back in from the hospital after delivering. I think I took maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks off, came back in with the second. And, she would hold him. I'd go see a patient. I would feel myself get like engorging essentially, and I'd hear him cry. It was chaos, complete chaos. But I remember looking over her shoulder at kind of the end of day reports. And I'm like, do you think we'll ever make it to like 10,000? And she's like, oh, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. But we didn't have these business
$10,000.
aspirations. $10,000, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't have these business aspirations. It was sort of just I was thrown into it.
Yeah.
And I think learning people, learning how to run a business, learning about rules and regulations. I mean, all of it, taxes, all of that was like feet in the fire, getting educated super, super fast. And I think that was an obstacle too. I think that looking back, if I had had a little bit more training and maybe a little bit more preparation, I might have done things differently. But boy, do we have a lot of really crazy, ridiculous stories to tell that kind of make it fun, but at the same time, probably would have saved me quite a bit of heartache as well.
What was that for, like, when you say you went and you opened up this practice initially, like what was that first sort of MVP product, like the initial offering that you had when you opened your doors versus like
I
call
mean,
it a year in, and then who did you enlist to help initially?
So, I mean, the initial was so simple. It was just, well, there were two main offerings because I'm an acupuncturist as well. So the initial offerings were acupuncture and time with me, like a consult, right? Of like evaluating health, examining patients, and then putting a treatment plan together. And it was really that simple. It wasn't much more than that. I would see patients, spend time with them one-on-one. I would do acupuncture. I would develop out these treatment plans. That was it. It was basically two services. I think a year later, I started to bring products into the practice because I found myself recommending the same things, and it was very difficult for a patient to go hunt for it or to go find
Yeah.
it, and, well, what brand do you like? Or what's the best one? I'm like, well, I'll just carry it here. So I think a year down the road, we got into sort of like, okay, let's carry a few products, right? I didn't hire my first employee till about 9 months later, right? I had my sister-in-law who was helping out as front desk, and I had myself, and I was doing all the triage. I was taking people back, doing the vitals, doing all that stuff, discharging them, doing everything. So we hit 9 months, and we surprisingly were busier than I'd ever anticipated. I hired my first employee, who is still with me to this day, and she's a complete character. But I remember her looking around the office and being like, why don't we start with some patient charts? So, and it's just like we still laugh about it to this day as how rudimentary, it was in the beginning. And so, those were the early days. That was just the nature of the way things went. And the surprising thing is there was very little marketing, and there was no social media
About
or
that.
any.
Like, how did the word get out? How did you
It
start getting
just
so many clients?
it was literally word of mouth in my website. You know what I mean? It was and I think it took 6 months. And by that 6 month mark, now remember, this is a tiny space. I literally have two exam rooms to do acupuncture and then one little consult room off to the side. My husband's dental practice is occupying the rest of the space. He would walk in stepping over people. There were people like sitting on the floor. There were people waiting outside because they had heard from someone that there's this doctor out there that's different and maybe she would have an answer. And I remember like it just kept growing,
And were these
really to my
people
surprise.
like what were they do they tend to be coming to you with the same ailments, or was it just people that like weren't getting answers for maybe something that was a little more chronic with the regular with an MD?
So it was primarily, so I when I opened, and I still have that first logo, it's an image of a woman and a child. I opened with the intent because I had studied Chinese medicine, and in Chinese medicine, you don't treat women and children separately, you treat them as a unit. Because they very much believe that the health of the two is synergistic. So I opened with that intent. And so it was a lot of women and a lot of children in the beginning that were not getting answers. So it wasn't a consistent complaint. It was more, I haven't been heard. I don't believe in the medical system, and then these are the things that have happened to me. And so it was hearing that over and over again, and then trying to get those stories. And then I was so new. And remember, I didn't have a lot of mentors, or a database of information to go through. I was literally learning and innovating on the go. And it would take me, an hour and a half to 2 hours to do a single treatment plan. So even though I wasn't seeing a lot of patients, I was spending a lot of time in researching and pulling information from different places together to create these like customized treatment plans. So there were some nights that I'd walk in, and remember, I have young kids. So it was kind of hard on our family. Like there were some nights I'd walk in and I wouldn't be home till 10 o'clock at night because it had taken me so long to put all of this together. And because financially I still, in my husband's business was new, I had this little consult based practice, I still work the ER. So there was a lot of like just back and forth movement and dropping the kids off on one side of town, driving to the ER, doing some of those shifts and not getting sleep, showing up to the practice, getting there. It was a very busy, stressful time. And, there are moments of those first 3 to 5 years that probably I honestly don't remember because so much was happening. I just remember like breastfeeding, changing a diaper, answering emails, running here, running there, packing a bag, going, it was just like movement. It was constant movement. But I so believed then, as I do now, that this needed to happen, and it was something about that, like really deep
That powered you.
seated belief that kept me going, and it still keeps me going to this day. And so those early years were hard and tough and physically grueling and emotionally, I was all over the place, but somehow I got through them. And I look back and I'm like, I don't really know if I want that for anybody else. I don't really recommend it. So even when I'm like mentoring my team or my staff, I'm like, you need to take a 6-month maternity leave minimum. You should do that, because I really don't know why I didn't. I think I was just so driven that it was just, we got to go, and that was the end of the
Broad
story.
purpose. How long were
Yeah.
you, two questions. How long were you working the ER while you were also running the business? And then as a bigger question, because you just said, I don't want anybody else to have to go through that.
Yeah.
What are some of the learnings that you have from those early years that you're like, maybe if I just made this tweak or if I'd done this sooner, I could have gotten myself out of a lot of the long hours, or do you feel like that wasn't possible? Like, was there anything in there that you feel like you could have changed to make it easier on you in hindsight?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that there's so many different things. First of all, here's just a basic one for all women, everywhere. Just hire help. I don't know why we were so resistant to hiring household help. I really don't know why. Like, get someone to do all the other junk, which is folding laundry, going to the grocery store, cleaning the house. Like, it took us a few years as a couple to get to that point. And honestly, it took a lot of fighting to get to that point. Like, we're fighting over stupid
Yeah.
shit. Like, you're busy, I'm tired, you're tired. We're
Yeah.
both wiped and we're fighting over, who's going to do laundry. This is ridiculous. So, it was, I think my mom actually suggested it. She's like, just get somebody in the house. You guys love each other. This is stupid. And
Yeah.
so I do, build a team for home and build a team for work before you walk in that door. And I think that I was
Smart.
completely unprepared on both fronts, both at home and both at work. So I think that's one thing. I would think about who is on your team. You need a village. You need people who are going to, step in, especially if you're doing the family work thing, in particular. You need people who are going to step in and help out with the children, with the home, with just the logistics of getting people from point A to point B. I think that's really, really important. If that stress had been dialed down a little bit earlier, I think I would have been a little bit more present when I was with the kids. Instead I had that running list 24/7 of what I needed to do. When it comes to the business, I would say kind of the same. Bring people in along with you, especially if you're in the early years, that can either serve as a mentor or advisor or someone you can just, go to. I didn't really have that. I didn't have, anyone to turn to or ask questions to other than my husband. And he was in the exact same phase and, boat of the business that I was. And so I think that would be a second recommendation I would make. And I think the third is don't do what I
House
did, which is go,
as a
don't go in.
plug.
I know. And I would say the third is don't go in blind. I mean, I think through a plan, and I think part of it, I think women today are different than women 20 years ago when I was in this, but I had a lot of self-doubt, to be honest. I was like, no one's going to come, oh, this is not going to grow. It's a recession. Who's going to pay out of pocket for this stuff? There's no way this could be anything more than a one woman show. It was just a lot of like, there's no way.
You
This is silly.
underestimated yourself.
Totally 100% underestimated all my capabilities. So I think just be very clear on what it is you want and who you are, and realize that we are way more powerful than we sometimes realize, and plan for that. And you may find, like, fast forward 20 years and my husband's, we're in completely different places with our businesses. Like, he's at a phase where he's like, I'm really tired of the HR and the BS, and a lot of the stuff, that he's had to deal with in running his different companies. And he's actually where I want to shrink. I want to just focus on this one business. Whereas I've landed in a very different place of we're going to grow and we're going to grow into all these different markets. And so I think the lesson there is before you start anything, really understand yourself. And understanding yourself means, so many things. What's your personality type? What's your energy level? Where's your health? What brings you hope and fulfillment and joy? And the reason I bring that up is because, I got through the craziness and the madness, but I'm a high energy person. And if you do personality test on me, I always test out in sort of that leadership or CEO profile, right? And I didn't know that. I didn't know that going through high school. I didn't know that going through college because I was on this med school track. But as the years have gone by and I've invested and done time in trying to understand myself, that's an important thing to understand. Where's your energy? Because somebody like my husband or others that have come through the company, they don't necessarily have that same energy level. And I think that's very important because then you're going to sign up for stuff that's going to burn you out and it's going to make you sick. So I think a lot of self-awareness is important. The other thing that's really important that I pray that people will walk away with is you've got to know your shadows. And I talk about this idea of shadows as sort of these darker people that live within us, right? We're all, for the most part, loving and optimistic and hopeful and joyful, but we've got shadows. And those are either from, things we were told when we were younger, trauma we may have dealt with, relationships that maybe didn't go well, fear of rejection or abandonment or financial ruin. These are all shadows. But those shadows in a business environment, they can get you really fast. And the sooner you confront them and understand, first of all, that they're there and that your decision making may be coming from one of these shadows rather than from your truest, authentic, empowered self, you'll cut that journey that I did probably in half. And you'll understand that, oh, I'm reacting out of fear or rejection or abandonment. I'm not reacting out of the fact that the universe is abundant and has put me on a path to accomplish this mission. And your decision will change. And so I hope I save everybody, not just the physical heartbreak of running around and doing all this stuff, but also just this emotional heartbreak of confronting your shadows, because different people will walk in and out of your life when you're running a company and a business, and you cannot let it demoralize you, bring you down, break you, but it will if you don't know who you are.
Oh, I mean, what an incredible life lesson right there. I mean, just it's so, so incredibly important. And we talk about this all the time as well in the 10th house, that it's just so important to know you as a business leader. And I think all of the business leaders across industry have really echoed that, Dr. Taz. So I so appreciate that wisdom, because I think it's something we all need to stop and acknowledge before we're sort of gung ho driving forward on a path, building a plan. But I do have, because I know that now I think you're over 50 million in your wellness empire, which is absolutely incredible. So obviously that was a big change from those days of being back in your office. Can you speak to what were sort of those step function changes in terms of how you got there, right? Like what were some of the biggest watershed periods of your business or benchmarks that you cleared that you felt were really pivotal in allowing you to scale? And what were also the key ingredients?
Definitely. And I'm still definitely on a journey. And, that valuation is coming from lots of different places. But one of, there's so many. So one of the things that I made a conscious decision about, I had to shift my thinking. So remember, I came into this thinking this is a hobby, this is small. And again, the patients have been my motivator. So when you keep hearing the same story over and over again and the years are going by, I just had this aha moment. And I think it was 2012, so 2009 we started. It was somewhere in 2012, 2013. Up until this point, it was still just me as the primary practitioner, and maybe I'd gone from one employee to maybe four by that point. But by 2012, 2013, it was, this has to be more than a hobby. This isn't working, and again, that desire to fix, what wasn't working, I think is honestly what's propelled the business, to be truthful. And what was happening was that people would take advice from me and then go to their local doctor or go to whoever, and the same thing, she's a quack, this is ridiculous. And then they'd come back and they're like, I don't know what to do. Do I trust this or do I trust this? And I'm like, this is not working. I go, I can't do medicine light. This has to be all
Like,
in. And
yeah.
so I think somewhere in that year I committed. I'm like, I have to scale this. I have to hire other providers. We have to do one-stop shop. We have to provide primary care and holistic care. We have to be able to quarterback all the things that come to health and wellness. And I think I made that silent promise to myself. I didn't really verbalize it or talk to anybody, but I started hiring other doctors, right? So in 2013, 2014, I think we hired two additional providers, which meant additional staff. And then from there, we
5 years
expanded the volume. This is about 4 years or so in.
in.
And then from there, that continued to grow. So that again has a rhythm of its own. So now more and more people are finding out about it. When we moved buildings, I had to get out of the same space as my husband's because obviously we had outgrown that tiny space. So we moved into a building of our own. Again, originally undershooting. I'm like, oh, I only need the first 2 floors. So we kept the third floor rented, thinking that the volume wouldn't justify it. Sure enough, we had to use that third floor. So again, we're just growing and growing and growing. The product component of the business expanded as well. We brought more SKUs into the business. We brought additional labs and laboratory testing into the business as well. We started to expand our service offerings to offer not just acupuncture, but things like massage and even a beauty, a med spa component to it as well. And then we opened our second location because the volume justified it. So we then opened a second location, and I think the spa opened maybe 5 years in, and then our second location opened probably about 6 years in. So all of this volume is happening and taking place. And then
Is it
we
still
began.
word of mouth predominantly? Like,
No, I think now it's everything. There's a lot. Word of mouth is still the biggest converter. Word of mouth and reputation and the results for the clinic component of what we do is still the biggest converter. It's you come to someone when you've been told to come to somebody, by somebody that and you may have seen us on social media, or you might have seen me on TV, or you might have seen, something one of my team members has done. But what really makes you pick up the phone and book that appointment is word of mouth. And that continues to be the biggest driver of clinic appointments. But what then happened was I'm doing all this media. So now the demand for what I offer is in cities like New York and LA and even Chicago, where I'm traveling a lot. And everyone's like, well, why don't you open here? Why don't you do something here? And I could not really get my head wrapped around how to make that happen because I'm still
yeah.
in this very mom and popish type model of running the business where I'm very hands-on, I'm very involved, all those different things. So at this point, I have managers. We don't really have a marketing person per se, but I definitely have managers. I have people looking at marketing initiatives. I have multiple providers, and now I have about three, I guess, locations that we're trying to
When you say
operate.
providers, you mean doctors within your practice?
Doctors and nurse practitioners are what we continue to hire. So I hired an acupuncturist too, by the way. So we also hired acupuncturists and health coaches and nutritionists as well. So we've got this team, right? Gelling, forming, building. I've got some managers underneath me as well, but I'm still kind of in it quite a bit. And so I'm like, how would we open in another market? And so we started prepping for that. We started prepping for what opening in a different market might look like. And I think it took us a year or two, but 2018, 2019, I started to look at additional locations. And 2019, we almost closed on the space in New York and something stopped me. And little did we know what was about to hit us all next. We hit 2020 and the rest is history. And so some protective force prevented me from signing that lease. And I don't know how I would have managed, that amongst everything else that was going on in the world at the time. But here's what 2020 did. It actually propelled us forward because it forced us to embrace telehealth and digital visits, which we had never done before. We had not advertised that we do it. We were not into it. I think at some level I didn't believe in it. Honestly, I'm such a like, I want to feel and touch and see you and connect with you type person. And we had no choice. But with that, our market ability exploded. We started being able to see patients all over the country, all around the world. You know, they were finding out about me through my books and through the different things I did. And before, we couldn't see them. Now we have this telehealth platform. We can see you. So that was the next like sort of ramp up in terms of, you know, what revenue was doing and how we were able to grow the business and scale the business. So as the pandemic started to recede and we started to look at our offerings again, that itch of being in these other markets came back. And, you know, I started to work on, you know, my next book. And as that was happening, it was clear that the next most logical step was to open in these cities that have asked me to be present for so long. And that's when we started to open the additional locations. So that's where we are. So all this is happening and it's still a bit chaotic because I'm speaking, I'm on TV, I'm doing brand deals. That's the Dr. Taz world. I've formulated and created products. That's this other company over here. And all of that was created again, not with a business interest, but was created because these were things I couldn't find for the patients that I was seeing. So we
Yeah.
have this product line that's mine, and then we have the clinics. And so the next download that I got as all this stuff is happening and all these balls are moving in different directions was that this all needed to come together. And if I was going to leave a legacy, you know, on how I think medicine should be, and really bring up the next generation of medical providers and practitioners and really provide patients with that one-stop shop, then I had to take all my intellectual knowledge, all my like media and authorship and marry it to the clinic and marry that to the products we were creating and bring it in one home. And that's what we're doing with Whole Plus. So Whole Plus is a digital one-stop shop for everyone so that anybody anywhere can enter this journey in their health depending on where they're ready, which is exactly the life cycle of which we've seen of the patient. That sometimes you're just wanting to digest information. So the information they'll get are blogs and videos that are vetted by us and our team, you know, that provide scientific information, but also allow for creativity in medicine. I'm so over the whole, well, we don't have a research study on this. That is not the grail. That is not the Bible. Your research studies are not the Holy Grail. So, anyhow, so we're bringing in, you know, we're taking all the content that we've been doing for years, putting it into one central place. We're building out the community component of it so that you can come in and you have an advisor and we meet as a group every single week in a digital platform. And then we're bringing all our clinics under that same umbrella so that you can use any of the resources we have and flex between them depending on where you are. And that's exactly what patients do. They come in, they may go on a journey for a period of time, then they fall off, then they come back in again, but they didn't necessarily want to be lost for that in between period of time. So now we're saying, well, here's an option for you to stay connected. So, you know, it's really offering sort of this one stop holistic health solution for families. We're doing primary care, we're doing wellness, we're doing holistic and functional medicine as well. And we're really kind of stepping up to the demand of like, okay, we need help, we need accountability, you know, we'd like to stay engaged past the clinic appointment. And so now we have an answer for that as well. So we were actively building and working on that. And, you know, it's coming along. It should be fully, you know, each aspect of it should be fully where I want it to be, you know, at least by May, June. And then you'll hear us talking a lot about it, but we are thrilled and beyond excited about it.
I mean, I can't wait for it. I mean, I'm going to be signing up. So I'm throwing that out there. So thank you for building that. But I'm curious in terms of your time, right? Like
Yeah.
this is huge. And as you said, you have high energy CEO type of personality. So that's something that probably resonates with you. But I'm just wondering as a provider and practitioner,
Yeah.
how much are you still seeing patients and how have you identified providers that provide the quality that you want? Like
I
as
love
you
that. Yeah.
scale, how do you really make sure that you're still providing the sort of Dr. Taz special sauce, if you will?
Yeah, definitely. So these are all questions that have come up over the years and probably have been the reason we haven't done this sooner, to be 100% honest.
Yeah.
But let me answer. There were a couple of questions there. So first of all, for me personally, going at these different levels, I obviously have relinquished more and more of what I do day in and day out. So we have an incredible team on the ground here in Atlanta that I rely 100% on. So everyone from our director and general manager to our operations managers to our marketing managers to the providers that work with us today, incredible. I couldn't speak more highly of them, and we are all close and tightly wound and tightly knit. And I know that's been a hard win to get to that point. So I value it and treasure it just so much. Now, when it comes to that question that so many people have asked me over the years when I've painted my vision, it's a valid question, but we have a methodology. And the methodology is not just practiced by me. We have named it, we patented it, and we are implementing it into a learning management system before we hire our next provider. Every provider to date has sort of been trained by one of us on the ground. They have learned what we do, they have shadowed, they've watched, and then they've gone through some modules and stuff like that. Well, we're taking that next level as well. So we're building a learning management system so that whether you're a provider in Chicago or Boston or New York, it doesn't matter. You have to walk through this process before you're allowed to see patients of our platform or clinic. Then we do have the team to audit all of that. So we audit charts, we provide education, we are meeting with them consistently so that they understand the direction that we're trying to go in. And at the end of the day, every provider has their own magic, right? We're not here to stifle anyone's creativity or anyone's like self-expression, right? So you may have a provider that's passionate about, mold, right? Whereas someone else is passionate about hormones, or someone else has an idea of how to do things. We want that creativity. We just need it to follow sort of this methodology. And as long as it's following the methodology, we think that every provider will have this opportunity to have a voice in medicine, which they don't have in the conventional setting. In the conventional setting, they're following these very standard protocols that don't allow you to think about the patient sitting in front of you as a complete individual. They really are just fixated on a particular lab number or fixated on a particular complaint. And so for the doctor, most of us have come in, whether you're a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a PA, most of us have come in with good intentions. We truly wanted to be of service to people, but the system does not allow this. And so here we have now an opportunity for providers everywhere to come in and practice holistic medicine while still staying true to maybe their training, right? We don't want anyone going way off left field and 100%, ignoring training without thinking it through. But at the same time, allowing for, okay, well, here's some other options in the toolbox. This is what you guys need to think about. I think that's how medicine should be. And a part of that too is, let's use pharmaceuticals, but let's be smart about it, right? Why are you on 6 different pharmaceuticals? Or if you got anxiety, given, we want you to be functional, but how about a baby dose of an anxiety medication while you do this other work, But I feel like the conventional medicine approach is this sledgehammer approach. It's this transactional prescription writing approach. Doctors are tired of it. Patients are tired of it. Nobody wants it. And so I'm saying we have an answer for everybody because the doctor-patient relationship is what's going to make this platform grow. And I'm just so excited and I'm hopeful that it's going to continue to grow well beyond me as well.
I love that so, so much. And we were just about at time. And I feel like I'm like I never do this. And I've been writing notes as you, as you were
I love
talking
it.
for myself. But I think as a final question, I would love to know and you already gave us such beautiful insights. What do you think? I usually ask, what's one piece of advice you would recommend for wellness entrepreneurs starting out? And I do have that, even though I love the know yourself and know what you're good at and know your shadows. So we're going to take that piece. And I also want to see what you think is next in the health and wellness space, some of the biggest trends you're most excited about?
So, advice for wellness entrepreneurs, I think it's a noisy space right now. I think there's a lot going on there. So I think it's really important to be clear about who you're targeting, what you are targeting. And then I think the word that comes to my mind is collaboration. I think I did a lot on my own for a long period of time. I think it was unnecessary. I think the more that we can collaborate and join teams or collectives or communities or things like that, I think that's going to be something that carries everybody forward together. And I think I'm excited to watch and see what happens there. As far as health and wellness trends, I think it's going to be about personalization. I think it's going to be about the role of energy and frequency and vibration in medicine and what that means for everybody. I think we're going to revisit the state of children's health and family health. I think that holistic medicine's going to be a trend coming up, and that not just the niche, but everybody's going to want to have and pursue because they're finding how, it's really interesting how you go from one extreme to the other. It's like at first we had conventional medicine and pharmaceuticals and all that other business. Now I feel like we're overcorrecting in the other direction. So I think that merging of the two is going to be a trend that is going to carry us into what medicine and healthcare is going to look like in the future.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for this. And for everybody that's listening, I know Dr. Taz talked a lot about the need for collaboration. That's what the 10th house is for. We found that every entrepreneur, no matter what industry, when you are building, you need people, and you need people that understand what you're going through, right? So they understand what it's like to have to reach a budget, or to be on a lease and be outgrowing it, or to be on a lease and not be able to cover your budget there. So we're all in the same sort of boat and the same shoes. So definitely check us out for our health and wellness cohort, because our community is our superpower. But I also agree with you in terms of the future of wellness. And I've seen myself, I wasn't able to find answers in conventional medicine, and have really been on a path to healing with the holistic space. But then also where they converge has been where the magic has happened as well. So super exciting. Thank you for everything that you're doing for all of us, and for the future of health and wellness. It's so needed.
Well, thank
So,
you. Thank you for having me.
all right. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a good one.